I should have known the moment I saw two identical white SUVs pull into the neighborhood within a week of each other that my peaceful suburban life was about to end. My name is Alex, and I have lived on Maple Grove Lane for 3 years without incident. I work remotely as a corporate consultant, which gives me flexibility and, admittedly, the resources to handle problems creatively when they arise. The neighborhood had always been quiet, governed by a homeowners association that mostly concerned itself with making sure lawns stayed trimmed and holiday decorations came down on time. Then Karen moved in. Actually, 2 Karens moved in. Karen Westbrook and Karen Paddington, and they both, through some cosmic joke, got elected as co-presidents of the HOA board during the annual meeting I had foolishly skipped. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on my back deck when Karen Westbrook appeared at my fence line, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob perfectly styled despite the 8 a.m. hour. "Good morning, I see you have placed a bird feeder in your backyard. According to HOA Bylaw Section 7-4-2, all outdoor fixtures require prior written approval. I am going to need you to remove that immediately and submit Form HOA-315 if you wish to reinstall it after board review." I stared at the bird feeder my late grandmother had given me, the one that had hung there for 3 years without complaint. Before I could respond, Karen Paddington emerged from the other side of my yard, her brunette pixie cut equally immaculate. "Actually, Karen, if you check Section 7-4-3, bird feeders under 12 inches are exempt. However, this one appears to be 13 inches, so you are correct. Alex, I will email you the form." The Karens looked at each other with the intensity of 2 predators discovering the same territory. This was going to be interesting. If you are enjoying this tale of suburban warfare, please hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World for more stories of neighborhood justice. Trust me, you will want to see where this goes. Over the next few weeks, the Karens began what I can only describe as an arms race of petty enforcement. Karen Westbrook issued me a violation for my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. It was midnight black instead of carbon black, apparently a crucial distinction. Karen Paddington countered by issuing a separate violation because my house numbers were mounted 1/4 inch too far to the left of center on my door frame. I received citations for my garden hose being visible from the street, for my trash can being outside 15 minutes past collection time, and for having a welcome mat that exceeded the approved dimensions by 2 inches. But here is what I noticed. Every violation I received twice. Each Karen was trying to out-Karen the other, using my property as their battleground. They were competing to see who could be the more vigilant enforcer of rules, who could find violations the other had missed, who could assert dominance over the HOA. I started keeping a spreadsheet. In 6 weeks, I had accumulated 43 violations, each requiring a $25 fine according to HOA rules. Some violations contradicted each other. Karen Westbrook insisted my front yard needed more decorative rocks. Karen Paddington insisted it had too many decorative rocks. Both threatened legal action. I tried reasoning with them separately. I invited Karen Westbrook to coffee and explained that perhaps we could find a compromise on the enforcement approach. Compromise? Alex, rules exist for a reason. If we let standards slip, the entire neighborhood descends into chaos. Do you want to live next to chaos? I certainly do not. Now, about your downspout color. I attempted the same with Karen Paddington the following week. You know, Alex, the problem with people like you is you think the rules do not apply to you. I have been documenting every single violation. I have photographs. Time-stamped photographs. Your downspout is the wrong finish. It is supposed to be matte, not satin. It was the downspout conversation that gave me the idea. They were not just enforcing rules. They were creating documentation, building cases, each trying to prove they were the superior HOA president. They were so focused on competing with each other through me that they had made themselves vulnerable. I am a consultant who specializes in corporate restructuring and competitive strategy. I have spent 15 years analyzing power dynamics and finding leverage points in complex systems. I also happen to have developed some very useful connections and, after a successful few years, the financial resources to pursue creative solutions to problems. I started my research that evening. The HOA bylaws were a mess, last updated in 1998 and riddled with contradictions. But buried in Section 12 was something interesting. Any board member could be removed by a 2/3 vote of the homeowners if they were found to have violated HOA rules while serving on the board. Furthermore, board members were supposed to be held to a higher standard and could face triple fines for violations. I kept reading. Section 15 stated that any homeowner could file a formal complaint against a board member, which would trigger a mandatory investigation by an independent third party. The next morning, I did something I had not done in months. I went for a walk around the entire neighborhood with my phone, taking careful photographs. I documented everything. Then I drove to the county records office. Then I made some calls to my network. One friend was a real estate attorney. Another specialized in municipal code enforcement. A third worked in land surveying. I explained what I needed, and they were all too happy to help. Apparently, overzealous HOA presidents are a universal source of frustration. What I discovered was beautiful in its simplicity. Karen Westbrook's house had a decorative shutter on the second floor that was exactly 1 inch wider than HOA specifications allowed. Her fence was 6.2 feet tall. The maximum allowed height was 6 feet. Her mailbox post was treated lumber instead of the required cedar. She had planted azaleas in her front yard that were not on the approved plant list. Most damningly, she had installed a backyard pergola without filing the proper HOA form. It had been there for 8 months. Karen Paddington's violations were equally abundant. Her house numbers were brushed nickel instead of the required oil-rubbed bronze. She had a decorative flagpole that exceeded height restrictions by 14 inches. Her driveway had been resealed with an unapproved sealant brand. She had outdoor lighting fixtures that were motion-activated, which Section 9-2 clearly prohibited. And she had replaced her front door without board approval, a major modification requiring a supermajority vote. I spent the next week compiling everything into 2 separate formal complaints, each 50 pages long, complete with photographs, measurements, citations to specific bylaw sections, and timestamps. I cross-referenced every violation with the exact rules each Karen had cited when issuing violations to me and other neighbors. Then I did something that required my particular resources and connections. I hired the most aggressive HOA compliance law firm in the state. They were known for handling cases where homeowners sued their HOA boards. They were ruthless, thorough, and expensive. I paid their retainer without blinking. Then I had my real estate attorney friend purchase something for me through a shell LLC. There was a small vacant lot at the entrance to our neighborhood, just outside the main HOA boundaries but with an easement that controlled access to the community clubhouse and pool. It had been for sale for years. Nobody wanted it because it was oddly shaped and had deed restrictions. I bought it for cash, and my attorney ensured the deed restrictions were modified to include one specific provision. The access easement could be revoked if the property owner determined that traffic from the neighborhood violated noise ordinances or created safety concerns. On Monday morning, I filed both formal complaints with the HOA board. Since the complaints were against the co-presidents, the bylaws required the vice president to handle them. The vice president was a retired accountant named Dorothy who had been steamrolled by both Karens for months and was clearly delighted to have something official to work with. She acknowledged receipt of both complaints and informed me that per the bylaws, an emergency board meeting would be held in 2 weeks, and both Karens would be notified of the charges against them. Then I sent each Karen a separate, private email. To Karen Westbrook, I wrote a detailed message explaining that I had discovered Karen Paddington had been filing duplicate violations against me to make herself look more vigilant, and that I had evidence she had been manipulating the violation records to claim credit for citations that Karen Westbrook had actually filed first. I attached carefully edited screenshots that made it look like Karen Paddington was undermining her. To Karen Paddington, I sent a similar email, suggesting that Karen Westbrook had been going behind her back to dismiss some of Karen Paddington's violations and was trying to push her out of the co-presidency. I attached different edited screenshots that told that story. I did not have to wait long. Within 48 hours, both Karens had filed formal ethics complaints against each other with the HOA board. Karen Westbrook accused Karen Paddington of falsifying records and abusing her authority. Karen Paddington accused Karen Westbrook of corruption and attempting to stage a coup. Dorothy, the vice president, now had 4 formal complaints to deal with. She scheduled the emergency meeting and hired an independent mediator as required by the bylaws. But I was not done. I reached out to every neighbor who had received violations from either Karen. There were 17 households total. I explained what I was doing and showed them the documented violations that both Karens had committed while serving on the board. I explained the bylaw that allowed for removal with a 2/3 vote. Every single household agreed to attend the meeting and vote for removal. Several offered to bring documentation of the harassment they had endured. The emergency HOA meeting was held on a Wednesday evening in the community clubhouse. 72 of the 80 homeowners in the neighborhood attended, the highest turnout in the HOA's history. Both Karens arrived separately, each with their own binders of documentation. They sat on opposite sides of the room, glaring at each other. Dorothy ran the meeting with visible glee. The independent mediator presented the findings first. Both Karen Westbrook and Karen Paddington had committed numerous HOA violations while serving on the board. The mediator had personally verified each violation I had documented. Per the bylaws, as board members, they were subject to triple fines. Karen Westbrook owed $4,200 in fines. Karen Paddington owed $3,800. Both had 30 days to pay or face liens on their properties. Then the mediator addressed the ethics complaints each had filed against the other. Both complaints had merit. Karen Westbrook had indeed dismissed some violations filed by Karen Paddington without proper authority. Karen Paddington had indeed filed duplicate violations and altered timestamps to make herself appear more diligent. The mediator recommended both be removed from the board immediately. Dorothy called for the vote. The motion to remove both Karens as co-presidents passed unanimously, with only the 2 Karens voting against it. The room erupted in applause. But I still was not finished. As the meeting was adjourning, I stood up and addressed the board. I have one additional matter. As some of you know, there has been ongoing discussion about renovating the community clubhouse and pool area. I have good news. I have recently acquired the property that controls the access easement to these facilities. I would like to donate that property to the HOA, along with a cash contribution of $50,000 toward the renovation project. However, my donation comes with one condition. The HOA must adopt a new enforcement policy that limits violations to genuine safety and property value concerns, and establishes an appeals process for any citations. Additionally, no former board member who has been removed for cause may serve on the board again for a period of 5 years. The room went silent, then erupted in discussion. Dorothy quickly called for a vote on accepting my donation with the stated conditions. It passed with 70 votes in favor and only 2 against. The Karens. After the meeting ended, I approached my attorney and had him hand each Karen a separate document. These were the detailed billing statements for all the legal work, documentation, surveying, and investigation services I had commissioned. Each Karen had violated HOA rules that directly corresponded to violations they had cited me for. Every single citation I had received from them could now be thrown out as selective enforcement. But more importantly, the documents included a notice that if either of them filed any further complaints against me or any other homeowner, I would pursue legal action for harassment, and I had more than enough documentation to make that case compelling. Then I had my real estate attorney deliver the final piece. The deed to the property I had purchased was indeed being donated to the HOA, but the donation would not be finalized for 30 days, during which time I retained the right to revoke the access easement. The letter explained that any attempt by Karen Westbrook or Karen Paddington to interfere with HOA business attend board meetings they were no longer entitled to attend, or continue their pattern of harassment would result in immediate revocation of the easement, which would effectively prevent anyone in the neighborhood from using the pool or clubhouse for the entire summer season. I watched as both Karens read their respective documents, standing 15 feet apart in the parking lot. Karen Westbrook's face went from red to purple as she realized the full scope of what had happened. She had been outmaneuvered, fined thousands of dollars, removed from the position that gave her purpose, and now faced the prospect of being blamed by the entire neighborhood if anyone lost pool access. She looked at me, then at the document, then at Karen Paddington. Karen Paddington's reaction was even better. She read the document twice, her hands shaking. Then she looked at Karen Westbrook, and I could see the realization hit her. They had been played against each other. Every email, every complaint, every escalation had been carefully orchestrated to make them destroy each other. They had spent weeks building cases against each other using the exact same petty enforcement tactics they had used against everyone else, and now they were both facing thousands in fines, public humiliation, and permanent exclusion from the HOA power structure they had craved. Karen Westbrook turned to Karen Paddington. Karen Paddington turned to Karen Westbrook. They stared at each other, then slowly turned to look at me. I smiled politely, gave them a small wave, and walked to my car. Behind me, I heard one of them start to say something, then stop. There was nothing to say. They had been completely, thoroughly, and legally outmaneuvered using nothing but their own rules, their own competitive obsession, and their own documented violations. If you enjoyed watching this double Karen takedown, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. Drop a comment and let me know what you would have done in this situation. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best revenge is letting entitled people destroy each other while you just document everything. See you in the next story.